Welcome to this edition of the Native News Update. I'm your host for today's program, Paul Demain. Many of the stories read here can also be found at our website at IndianCountryNews.com. Here is the news from the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. The Agurana Indians have a well-earned reputation as warriors in Peru. In pre-Columbian times, they successfully resisted Inca subjugation, and during Peru's 1995 border war with Ecuador, they served as guides for the Peruvian army. Those who know them weren't surprised then at the fierce resistance when 30 to 40 warriors were killed recently, along with 23 police and military officers, when President Alan Garcia's government sent heavily armed police to clear several thousand members of the tribe and their Wampi cousins from an Amazon highway blockade. The ensuing turmoil has set Garcia's government on a collision course with his Andean nation's indigenous peoples. London-based Survival International, which promotes tribal rights, called last Friday's Melee Peru's Tiananmen Square, comparing it to China's bloody 1989 crackdown on pro-democracy protesters. It was Peru's worst political violence since the Shining Path guerrillas were quelled in the mid-1990s and prompted Indian and labor groups to call a general strike today throughout the country. The strikers' demands are the same as those of the protesting Indians: that Congress revoke laws to promote oil and natural gas extraction, logging, and large-scale agricultural on traditional Indian lands. Garcia decreed the laws to comply with a new U.S.-Peru free trade agreement. We're not taking even one step back. We haven't lost this fight, protest leader Daisy Zapata said. Peru's government on Tuesday denied using excess force against the Indians. The government filed sedition charges against Alberto Pazango, Zapata's boss, in an organization representing 350,000 people among 56 Amazon nations. Pazango took refuge this Monday in the Nicaraguan embassy, and the Central American nation announced Tuesday that it was going to grant him asylum. Also on Monday, Garcia's Minister of Women and Social Development resigned to protest the government's handling of the crisis. Carmen Vildaso said her resignation was for, quote, political reasons, obviously, unquote, but declined to elaborate. Cabinet Chief Yuhendi Simon said she objected to the government TV ads that showed gruesome photos of slain police officers and claimed an international conspiracy wants to prevent Peruvians from benefiting from their oil. The Ricarilla Apache Nation has signed a 20-year agreement with Enterprise Products Partners that will allow the Houston-based partnership to continue natural gas operations on tribal land. The right-of-way agreement allows Enterprise to continue to own and operate infrastructure and related assets on tribal land, including lines connected to the company's San Juan Basin gathering system. The system, comprised of more than 6,000 miles of natural gas pipelines in New Mexico and Colorado, gathers more than 1 billion cubic feet of natural gas each day. The tribe says the agreement also includes incentives that could lead to expansion of the gathering system on Ricarilla Apache land. The tribe says a portion of its reservation will be off limits to oil and gas activity to protect religious, cultural, and pristine sites. Washington State University researchers presented their report on Native American students commissioned by the Washington legislature today during a meeting of high-level educators in Seattle, Washington. From Where the Sun Rises, addressing the educational achievement gap of Native American students in Washington State, was the focus of the meeting hosted by the Governor's Office on Indian Affairs in cooperation with the Indian Education Office within the Superintendent of Public Instruction. The goal of the meeting was to plan the next steps the state will take to implement the report's recommendations. They want to know the strategies and the steps we'll take to keep this alive, said Michael Pavel, WSU's Associate Professor of Education and leader of the research team. We appreciate people holding us accountable, asking what the next steps are. We realize the state is in dire financial straits, but there's a lot that can be done that doesn't cost money. For example, we can open channels of communication between tribal communities and school districts. An unprecedented 2-year undercover operation led by agents from the Interior's Bureau of Land Management, BLM, and the FBI today began rounding up what prosecutors call a ring of archaeological grave robbers who looted pristine sites in the Southwest, desecrated ancient American Indian burials, and stole priceless artifacts, selling them to dealers and collectors who were associated with the network. FBI and U.S. Marshals, joined by local and state law enforcement officers, today began arresting 24 individuals and executing a dozen search warrants in 4 different states. Federal agents have identified more than 250 artifacts stolen by the ring, with an estimated value exceeding $335,000, including decorated Anasazi pottery, burial and ceremonial mask, a buffalo headdress, and ancient sandals known to be associated with Native American burials. Let this case serve notice to anyone who is considering breaking these laws and trampling our nation's cultural heritage that the BLM, the Department of Justice, and the federal government will track you down and bring you to justice, said Secretary of the Interior Ken Salazar. The Mashantucket Pequot tribe is cutting back on what has become one of the major American Indian gatherings in the United States, the Scammitzin Festival. A smaller social gathering will be held in August of this year instead of Scammitzin, which has been costing the tribe about $1 million a year. Scammitzin has been sponsored by the tribe since 1991. A tribal member says vendors, tribal members, sponsors, employers were notified officially this week the large-scale celebration has been canceled. The smaller powwow will be held on the grounds of the Mashantucket Pequot Museum and will cost the tribe less than $50,000 to hold. Scammitzin celebrates the harvest and means Feast of the Green Corn and Dance in the Eastern dialect languages spoken by the Mashantucket Pequots and other Eastern tribes. The public is invited to celebrate the official kickoff of the upcoming Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation Golf Course on Monday, June 15, 2009, and for the first time, learn details such as its new name, insider information on its innovative design features, and why it's being called one of the premier courses now in the Midwest. The golf course is being designed by NB3 Consulting, owned by Notah Begay III. Begay is the only full-blooded Native American on the PGA Tour and is a 3-time All-American teammate, roommate of Tiger Woods. In addition to winning 4 PGA Tour tournaments, he is the 3rd player in the history of the professional golf to shoot a 59 in a professional event. The event will be held at the Prairie Band Casino and Resort near Marietta, Kansas. And that is the latest roundup of news from Indian Country. On this edition of the Native News Update, we want to thank our underwriters for helping us with this broadcast and you for joining with us no matter how many times we mumble around with the news of the day. Miigwech for coming here again.